Blessings in Jesus' name, amen. Projection. Projection is witchcraft. Projection is when somebody speaks into something. The devil is the god of this world, small g. That means he's the god of, to a limited extent, your situation, your circumstances. Satan is, to a limited extent and degree, the god of your circumstances. Are you getting it now? There is the test. What he wants you to do is become subject to the world and not subject to God. You see? So what he wants you to do is submit to your circumstances. So that's what him and his demons continue to point to and try to affect. And when their attempts to harm you by your circumstances fail because you're resourceful or generalist in what you're capable of doing, then what they try to do is affect how you feel spiritually by placing in and around you demonic spirits to persecute you to a greater extent and degree. This is to their shame. Because despite all their strategical attempts to box you in, what God created you to be alone has undone them. The Bible says that God knit you together in your mother's womb for such a time as this. So even as a human being, you can out-strategize Satan and his entire kingdom by the counsel of God. And your resourcefulness has shown the devil's attempt to make, through expensive pricings, things out of your reach, outside of your ability to purchase. You have been able to cultivate, craft and create for yourself. Then the devil is left completely redundant, completely shamed, because his ability to be the dragon on the crock of gold, like the little antagonistic leprechaun, trying to get you to chase after his gold and so run into his mouth and belly. He fails in this because God has given you plenty of provision in your ability to craft and make and be self-sufficient. So what he has to do is up the ante when it comes to spiritual oppression or demonic oppression. So he has to send his demons to sort of muscle you and to make themselves felt, because that's the only way that remains for him to affect your circumstances. Because he's thrown everything else at you. Houselessness, homelessness. I prefer to call it houselessness because Jesus is my home eternally. Limited income, hunger, thirst, things of that nature, isolation, disconnecting you from family, etc., for many, many years. All of these types of things, joblessness, etc., etc., all things that the devil can affect through circumstances, through his men who he places in positions of authority within societies and governments. All of these gatekeeping attempts to strategically box you in have only led to your resourcefulness, to doing things for yourself, and to engaging the world in the way that God has commanded you to. And by so doing, the devil is completely exposed as just that rotten-mouthed dragon sitting on the gold, depicted in movies like Lord of the Rings. I think it's Lord of the Rings, the dragon, the dragon when he's in the cave. just a big, wily old thing, with adept senses, just sort of, hunting and supposing and investigating and applying his wits and wiles. Just left there in his own stink on his crock of gold, when you've just been resourceful by the counsel of God and by the abilities and giftings that God gave you, totally showing his glory, foresight, and ability to create somebody in the womb hundreds of years before, 40 years before the trial that he will face, in such a way that will see him through that trial, or her. Along with, of course, God's ongoing counsel and God's going before and protecting your aft. So God is the keep in every way, with foresight, and he watches your back, he goes before you, he knows everything about you, things you don't know and haven't discovered yet. And so there he is, Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, the one who is and who was and is to come, the Almighty. And so he's showing himself greater in every way than his enemies, able to train his soldiers in the fight, not before it as most soldiers are trained, but in it, because he is who he is. And this totally undoes Satan, such that he's left before all of his covens and lodge rooms and synagogues and ranks and councils and kings and servants, with nothing but torment left, and basic torment at that. And that's all he's got left, because strategically, what else has he got? Only closing doors in your face. What else? Or pricing things out of your reach, or whatever it is. Or joblessness, telling his wicked servants, wicked gatekeepers, not to hire you, not to give you a job, not to give you this, that and the other thing. And not to give you the same fair crack of the whip that everybody else gets, while he claims, "I'll be fair now, fair and square." A hypocrite. A toothless wonder. No solid structure in his mouth. Just a snake. And so he is sort of like a toothless serpent, because he constricts. He doesn't actually have the authority to bite. So my point is this, that God's glory is seen before all, and Satan is shamed even within his own ranks by the saints that God raises up, despite Satan, in sight of him. And so, of course, Satan buzzes then, like an angry snake with venomous intent. And he just tries to increase his attacks. But what this shows us as God's saints is that everything on media, because, our isolation might lead us a little bit more to be on social media, whatever. Everything on social media is fed to you. This is why it's called news feed. Because one of the mechanisms of the devil is a cancelling effect. But he also likes to cram everything back into your brain that came out your mouth. Or make you eat your words. News feed. So everything that you've said, the devil will try to regurgitate through your news feed on Facebook. That's what he uses it for. So him and his demons are hatching ways to cram what you've spoken back into you, subconsciously, into your mind, through your news feed on Facebook. They call it catching up with you. I'll catch up with you later. That's what they mean. What they mean is everything that's come out of you over the last 3-4 weeks, we're going to cram it back down into your head through your news feed. That's what they're like. That's what they're made of. They're absolutely bilious, hideous, wicked, mad bastards. That's what they are. They're absolute lunatics. And all they intend to do is harm. Nothing more. There's no good in them whatsoever. The rest of it is a facade. And so God has placed his saints to completely undo every principled argument that Satan has presented as a high-reaching argument against the throne of God and his reigning methods. And they are completely exposed as hideously hypocritical covens and lodges of wicked men full of ghouls and ghastly goblins. Foul spirits, in other words. The babbling heads, talking heads, the death machine. You know all those heavy metal bands with the names that are a bit obscure? Basically they're describing Satan's kingdom. Death machine, talking heads, all of that. It's all demonic. The cosmic powers, the manifesting demons are talking heads. They're basically Jesus calls them goat demons because that's what demons do. Did you ever see a goat? The faces I just made there are what a goat will do, and that's what demons are like. Their hideous countenance, a nonsensical babble, a babbling brook, like, you know, when the water's kind of going over the rocks and then the water goes up and down, it creates bubbles and all these trickly sort of flowy sounds, bubbly sounds. It's a babbling brook of nonsense. Is Satan's kingdom. It's basically what they are. You see the point? So all it is the devil's cancelling effects. That's the witchcraft device. That's all he has. All he has is his basic witchcraft methods, which are hexes, vexes, mimicry, cancelling effects. They're kind of one and the same. Mimicry is sort of a cancelling effect. Have you ever heard, we'll take the wind out of their sails? So this is done with the implementation of mimicry for the purposes of cancelling effects. That's the size of them. They are the guy that starts his sentence before you finish yours. The guy that when he's talking to you raises his hand up over your chest height and takes a step towards you. The guy that they're always trying to impose and dominate and assert themselves. They're always trying to make themselves felt, to put out their smell. They're always trying to be a badger and a hound. Do you know the hounds of hell? They're hounding the saints. The way they go after the fox. It's sort of a constant guttural sound, isn't it? When they're hounding. Or badgering. A badger won't stop until he hears a crack. They're the most determined, vicious little creatures. And that's what demons are like. They're not satisfied until they hear a break, which is how Jesus frames it, as he says, or phrases it. He says, they cannot rest until they make somebody stumble. They just can't sit easy. Until somebody else has suffered because of what they've done, they can't sit easy. They can't relax. What a horrible way to exist. Can you imagine you can't get any rest? And it's loosely called rest. But you can't go in your bed until you've hurt somebody in some way. They're the guys who run the government. Those sociopaths, those psychopaths are the people in charge. Because Satan puts them there. Because he has dirt on them. So he can get them to do what he wants them to do. So again, hexes, vexes, incantations, charms, enchantments, evocations, provocations. To evoke is to elicit a feeling. So they'll use memories of people past, situations that they know you have a deeper connection to, and they'll try and use these situations to stimulate your heartstrings at a time when they intend to do a heart attack. So they try to activate, stimulate, or titillate the parts that they're trying to attack at any given instance. They're hideous. There's no good in them. Basically pigs in a trough. Rolling in their own crap and shame. Jesus said they glory in their shame. They're pigs. A pig glories in his shame. He glories in his own dirt and filth. He rolls in it and cakes himself in it. It's his pride. It's just like the old giants. It's like the demons when they had bodies. The kills all around the cave. It's like the head of that man there that I killed, and the festering, cavernous snake pits of their last meal. And they glory in it. The head I got. They're beasts. Beasts. And worse. The manifestation of chaos. So, God is the opposite of all of that. Absolute perfection. And what you see, this is the trick, you see. What you currently see, what is presented to you in society, is only a sheath. It's only a surface layer on the evil that is within it. And Satan has implemented systems to keep that hidden. It's a carpet to blanket it, so that he can save face in order to continue. It's like a facade, a face on the front of his evil systems, so that he can conceal them from you while he hunts you. Because, you're going to start asking questions, you start seeing a whole lot of skeletons around the place. Where did they come from? They don't want to spook you. Not yet. They don't want to spook you if they're tormenting you. Not if they're trying to win your heart and mind by deceiving you. So they try to win you by deception, and if they can't do that, they'll try and torment you and break you. That's all they'll do. They don't know what fairness is. When you talk about fairness, they don't know what fairness is. They haven't the foggiest notion. Theoretically they might understand the concept, but through implementation they don't do it. They don't actually value it. Only when it affords them an opportunity to do more evil. That's when they'll say, "Oh, fair play." They're ghastly. trolls. Troll under the bridge, the diaphragm, they're guttural, they're under the cave. Whoa, 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 like the hound. And that's why the things that manifest in society, like, you know, the big exhaust on the back of the little car that's going whoa around the town, that's a low frequency rumble. It's all guttural. They're always trying to stimulate the lower guttural frequencies within society. Like the guy, the rappers, that's low guttural frequency. Because they're demonic. They're low spirits, lesser spirits. Jesus said, "You are from below, I am from above." You see? So that's why they're constantly trying to stimulate the lower parts. The stomach, the penis, the anus. That's where their focus is. And then they want to turn the upper parts into the lower parts and misuse them as the lower parts. Because they only know lower. So they treat the upper like the lower. And the lower often like the upper. Because they're trapped lower. And they're chaotic and so a sort of an inversion, doing everything that's ungodly and disordered. So this is why Jesus calls them unnatural sexual relations. So that's what they try to use. And so you should know that your Facebook feed is tailor-made for you. Demons attack you through it. Know this. These are algorithmically implemented stratagems. The infrastructures on these social media sites is not by accident. It's deliberately an infrastructural complex designed to gain access to you, to basically gain access to your house, to use witchcraft tactics against you. Satan uses the iPhone or the Android or whatever as his magic wand. You're holding his magic wand in your hand. This phone is his magic wand. Do you understand now? Do you get it now? The phone is witchcraft. This social media infrastructure is witchcraft. But God restrains it. So Satan has to be very, very careful how he expresses his kingdom. So there are limitations placed upon it. There is a holy limiter. Because Satan is low, and in order to make his expression, he has to conduct himself in a certain manner. Do you understand now? So that's all of that. News feed, Facebook news feed, based upon the things you've liked. So now they know what you like. If you've done made a purchase, then they know what you've purchased, and you know the way it shows up in your feed. Or even if you're searching something but you didn't make the purchase, it shows up in your feed. Or some of these websites say, you were looking at this, quick, buy it, there's only 15 left, or there's only 3 left, or whatever it is. They know what you've been looking at, and they're trying to get you to engage the world and to continue purchasing and consuming, and because they're trying to get you interested in the world, to focus on this world. So the more they can do that through advertisement, and the cheaper they can make things, then the less likely you are to make them. Because you're more likely to just buy it for convenience. And so society decays. Society decays in its ability to be self-sufficient. So I'll always elect to make something if I can rather than buy it, because I think it's a good practice. Or I'll try to buy something, and if I need something else, I'll try and refashion it as that thing. Because it's a good thing to do to develop your crafts, develop your abilities, your skills, even if it's only to a certain extent. It only has to function. Whatever you make, it only has to function, but they want you to be trapped in buying the best looking thing, or the most trendy thing. What does it matter? It only matters that it works, that it does the job you intended to do. It can look nice, but it doesn't have to be brilliantly machined with precision in a factory. You can make it. So they've done that. They've mechanized everything. They've used technology to basically cause a decay within society in terms of the ability of the individual household to be self-sustaining, because they're trying to centralize power and control, to implement debauchery and immorality, because eventually Satan wants to say, if you don't take my mark and submit to me and bow down to me, you won't engage society as everybody else. So what does he have to do in order to have that kind of control? He has to take the ability for households to be self-sustaining away from those households. So that starts with the Constitution. It starts with the governments failing to make the provisions that they're supposed to be making, financially speaking, so that there's a press and a pressure on the households such that they have to go and buy the cheap thing. See the point? And that's happening now. It's already in place. They're already encouraging people, inciting people to fight against their own constitutions in their own countries, using terminologies which are blatantly seditious and treasonous. Like one such terminology in Ireland is the term used by even the highest courts of investigation in our land, the Court of Appeal, that we should presume something constitutional. They've even used that term so cheekily and so blatantly, barefaced. They've said this section of the legislature is presumptively constitutional. In other words, we must treat it as though it is constitutional. But why would a court of appeal notice that something had some doubt or ambiguity surrounding it in terms of its constitutionality, and then elect not to investigate it, but rather say presume it is constitutional, when they are the investigatory body paid to remove that ambiguity? Disconnect. Doesn't make any sense. So it just goes to show that they are conspiring in that sedition and treason. They're involved in that decay and failure on the part of the government to implement the Constitution, such that gainful employment would be afforded to a man, so that the woman could stay home and homestead and raise the children and whatnot, because they could afford to, because they had gainful employment. It says that in the Irish Constitution. It says it must be an endeavour of the government. The government must endeavour to ensure that it never be as a matter of economic necessity that the woman leaves the house and goes to work, because our forefathers understood that in order for the common good to be preserved, women needed to remain in the household with the family and teach them the ways of righteousness and good morality for the upkeep of societal precepts and conventions that would maintain the common good, harmlessness within society, and good governmental systems which were well functioning, such that people in general would have enough and not become reliant upon corrupt governments. which is the attempt now of the current government, which is Freemasonically driven. Freemasonry is a satanic witchcraft coven that sort of poses as a philanthropical or benevolent fraternity of old men, drinking tea and eating sandwiches, which they do. But that's the facade. That's the front, man. You fronting, man. They're a mafia. They are Satan's cabal. They're the synagogue of Satan. And so they serve those who claim to be Jews and they're not, but are a synagogue of Satan. They pay their dues to get by in society. So the point is that they're fighting against the Constitution of Ireland with these terms, which are mechanisms, disconnect mechanisms, which are departure mechanisms from the Constitution of Ireland and from their actual duty and office, the one we pay them to implement, such that they're doing the opposite of what we paid them to do, because they're an inversion, a departure, a satanic organisation which depart from the ways of well-functioning societies for the implementation of the corpse, the dead body, the corporation, which is abbreviated as the corpse, CORPSE, is the dead body, the cadaver. Remove the E of the corpse. So it's no coincidence. It is a death to society, to centralise power, to centralise production, because it's not well leavening, it's not good for culture, it's not good for the common good or the homestead, for many reasons that go beyond economic reasons. But the economic reasons are the provisional protections in place which allows the household to function well in other areas that aren't economic. So we do have economic protections on the household. One such is that which is enshrined in the Irish Constitution, gainful employment. So because they talk now about new terminologies which aren't coined phrases or enshrined terms within our Constitution, such as minimum wage and the living wage, well, whatever is the living wage, all that says is that you won't die. So they're saying, we won't let you die, your body die, but we will attack the common good, which is not merely economic, but there are economic provisions and protections or mechanisms in place that enable us to protect the other, which is why true currency is eventually time. So if the mother doesn't have time with her children, who does? And that's where Satan is. And that's why he took gainful employment away from the man, so that the woman would have to leave the household and depart from the children, because he wanted to draw Mammy Bear away from the cubs so that he could attack the cubs. And that infuriates me, because it shows the scumbag he is. He's a scumbag. He would pull Mammy away from babies to attack them, to see their souls burning forever in hell. He's scum. And he uses these fluffy old boys down in the Freemasonic Lodge there to implement those stratagems, those systems which become systemic decay, in order to isolate the little babies and the children, to fill their head with satanic rhetoric, so that they grow up more and more in spiritual bondage, more and more conformed to the ways of this dying and decaying world, which Jesus came to deliver you from. So the job of a Christian preacher is to expose where Satan is trying to effect this catastrophic change, to target and attack the future generations, which of course are the children. And he fills their heads with these anti-life scenarios that don't actually happen, like global warming, all of these types of things which will affect their behavior in a certain way, which is a division. So he's always trying to think up these stratagems, these stories, these imaginary crises, such that they would impact societal systems in a way that encourage those separations or those divisions within society. So there's method in it. But it's scummy. He's a scumbag. I hate him. So we as a society need to come together. And whenever we as saints of God try to expose those corruptions, whenever we try to reach out to the societies in love, he fights against us even more. And the way that scumbag fights against the saints is he tries to corner us in our quarters. So, like, for example, I'd be out busking during the day playing my cajon drum and the guitar and singing to the people. And it's beautiful to see the reactions of people, babies in the pram, and older people are very kind and they'll come over, because a lot of them are on pensions. So if they even put 20 cents in, it means a lot. So it's good, it's great to see people enjoying the music, interacting with the music. Today there were people walking by singing along with the songs. It's brilliant. That's what society is about. That's what good, well-functioning culture is about. It's about people coming together. It's about people enriching each other with the crafts of their hands. It's about that. And that's what Jesus is encouraging us to continue. Work with your hands, he said, so that when you have done your work, you have a little bit left over to give to somebody in need. Well, if you don't have gainful employment, you can't do that. So that is the definition of gainful employment. The definition of gainful employment is gain. Work with your hands so that you have a little bit left over so that you can give to your neighbour in need. What I do is I work with my hands, and my work is my gift. Because Satan has otherwise tried to remove me from society by not giving me a job, not giving me rent allowance, getting his men to get between me and fair provision as others receive in society. So he has tried to cut me off. He really has. He's tried to isolate me. He's denied me rent allowance. So I've had to diversify. I've had to come up with different things. And of course it's developmental because it encourages you. So God intended that for good for me. The devil only intended it for bad. But of course, they tried to claim the good. It's sickening if you let it. They tried to claim the good effects. Well, it didn't do them any harm, did it? As if they didn't intend any harm by what they were doing. They're trying to destroy your soul. So when they go, "I should only did them good." I mean, if you wanted, that could really twist you and make you resentful and bitter. And that's all they're about. Harm. There is no good intention in them. They're a bag of dead bones. They're a bag of rattling bones. There's no good in them. So when you realize what Jesus said, when he said, "What they meant for evil, I meant for good." God doesn't lie, so no, they meant it for evil. What they meant for evil, I meant for good. So he's basically saying, there's not a move they make that I haven't foreseen or foreknown. And because they fell into my hands by ways of their crimes, I'm able to wield their efforts in a way which are for your benefit and to your benefit. Just like Jesus hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and that was his judgment, which then saw the plagues come against him, which was more of his judgment. So God can use your judgment as something that will affect and bring about more judgment. Because he's God. So it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. You see? Because if you choose evil, you bring evil on yourself. You bring evil on your household. And that's what I try to say to the younger guys. I didn't know it as a younger guy. And I didn't have people telling me it as a younger guy. I didn't have the counsel that I try so hard to give to others. That counsel is this. You are, as a human being, you are a sort of a king innately. You're made in the image and likeness of God. So that means you have hands and speech. These are powerful things. Very powerful. So you can speak and affect somebody. You can touch and affect somebody. So you are a sort of a king because you conduct yourself in ways that will inevitably and unavoidably affect others. So long as you're engaging society and other people. And so you are a sort of a king, therefore, aren't you? Because your decisions are affecting others. That is a form of rulership. You are ruling your own temple, which is a temple that affects other temples. And so what I say to the younger guys is whenever I get the opportunity, or just anybody in general, and I hope to really reach the younger guys with it, is however you treat others on your throne is what will eventually come back to you. An evil king brings evil upon his kingdom. If he is evil to his people, that evil will return to him. So however you choose to engage society will befall your household. So don't take the bait. Don't presume things constitutional. These are criminals trying to incite crime when they use a term like that. In law, there's a term called, or a phrase that they use, ignorance is no excuse. Well, if ignorance is no excuse, why would a government ever lead the people to blind compliance, which is a form of willful ignorance? Presumption of constitutionality? Presumptively constitutional? But it's the government's job to implement the Constitution, not ignorance as to what it is. You can't do both. So they're self-confessed failing to implement their office and now inciting others to do the same and fight against their own Constitution when they implement the term presumptively constitutional, which is at Court of Appeal level in this country. They're now using this term. How does the Court of Appeal implement the law they're only presuming? They can't presume things lawful because they know what the law is, don't they? Do you see the point? You can't presume something lawful if you know the law. I can't presume that I'm holding a phone right now because I know I am. So you can't presume something and know it. It's one or the other. You only presume something because you have lack of evidence to confirm it as being such. So you presume it as being such. So you can't presume something and know it. So our Court of Appeal are saying to us, we don't know the law. And we're inviting you to not know it as well. But they go a step further than that. They say, we don't know the law, and we don't know what we're telling you is lawful, but do it anyway. So they're actually commanding you to fight against your own constitution. Your court of appeal are now commanding you under threat of imprisonment as they wield the authority of the army of this country and this nation to fight against the Constitution of Ireland. This is an occupying force. Ireland is occupied at administrative level. It's sedition. That's the extent of criminality we're witnessing in this age. That's why they fight against me so vehemently. That's why they put me in prison for a month and told me I couldn't speak for 2 years. And even after they found that these were injustices perpetrated by the state, made no compensation order or order of restitution, which is their constitutional duty. So they're totally exposed as criminals. A criminal cabal occupying our government. They're exposed. I've totally exposed them. That's why they send their tormentors against me. They have nothing else to do. Let the devil be rebuked in Jesus' name, amen. A holy kiss. The victory is Jesus's. Come to him and have peace.